All right, so Andy, you brought something for us to see.
I brought a lot to see, and a lot to talk about.
Okay.
When you approached me about doing today's show, you said, well, let's talk about snakes. And so I did bring an animal ambassador, but I want to talk about snake bites and why people fear snakes.
Okay.
Snakes evoke probably the most extreme emotional response of any of our education animals.
Okay.
And a lot of it's hyped on TV, folklore, back in the Old Testament, Adam and Eve and the snake and all. Snakes do a good job of ridding your garden of pests, but there are some issues with venomous snakes that may have been overhyped.
Okay.
Now, one thing I do want to put out a disclaimer, the information we're going to talk about this morning has to do with snakes in the Memphis area.
Okay, good.
If you get outside the Memphis area, particularly other parts of the world, the attributes of venomous snakes can be different in important ways.
Okay, good.
But to put it into context, about 45,000 people in the United States get bitten by snakes every year, over a huge country. Of those, probably 6,000 or 7,000 people are bitten by venomous snakes. And then of those, only 5 or 6 people die. Of course, it's still tragic, but still, it gives you an idea of the scale of it.
Right.
When talking to students about snakes, first thing the students will say, well, we're afraid we'll get bitten. Well, of course, anything with a mouth can bite you.
Right.
But you get a show of hands of how many people in the room have been bitten by a little brother or sister. You get a big show of hands.
Right.
No one in the room typically has ever been bitten by a snake or knows anyone, but still, people fear, and rightly so, getting bitten by a snake. Memphis, as far as venomous snakes go, is not too bad a place to be. We have 4 types of venomous snakes that tend to that are possible in our area.
Okay.
One of them, 2 of them are rattlesnakes. This is a timber rattlesnake and a pygmy rattlesnake, but there really aren't a lot of rattlesnakes in the Memphis area. They tend to be more forest and that sort of stuff. Okay. And that's good news because, because of the snake deaths in the United States. So the 5 or 6 people who do die of snake bites, it's typically a rattlesnake.
Wow.
Common in our area, though, are copperheads and water moccasins. And I brought freeze-dried. This is an adult copperhead, and I brought a mount that shows some different types of snakes, including a young copperhead. Copperheads are probably the most frequent source of snake bites and that sort of stuff, but people rarely die of their bites. Cottonmouths may chase you. They live near water and such.
Wow.
But as far as people gardening and all that sort of stuff in Memphis, provided you don't have a pond or swamp in your backyard, a copperhead is probably the one you're most likely to run into.
Okay.
But even though I'm getting ready to give you some information that if you can tell this information, you're too close, but a couple tips how the difference between venomous and non-venomous snakes. One of the most characteristic in our area have to do with looking at the heads. Venomous snakes have elliptical pupils like cat eyes. Non-venomous snakes have round pupils. Also, their heads are narrow. Venomous snakes' head are arrow-shaped. And the reason they're arrow-shaped, actually their venom glands are modified salivary glands, and venom's a modified form of saliva. If you can look under their tail, you'll see under the anal plate, venomous snakes have a single line of scales, whereas non-venomous have a double line. And if you are lucky enough, in my parlance, to find a snake shed in your backyard, you can tell if it's venomous or non-venomous by looking at the tail.
Okay. Wow.
But again, that gives you an idea what you have around. But if you can tell these things, you may be too close. I did bring an animal ambassador. This is a speckled king snake. This is the most common king snake in our area. There's 7 subspecies of king snakes. This is one, but again, it's the most common. They're called king snakes. One of their favorite foods are other snakes. They're said to be immune to the venom, and they have special techniques of latching onto the head of venomous snakes to keep them from getting bitten. Okay. But like other snakes, they are secretive. They hang out in the same sort of areas, and they're well adapted for hunting. They also eat lizards, mice, a wide variety of other things.
So they're helping us out.
All snakes help us out. And in fact, one of the things that attracts snakes to the area, if you have mice and that sort of stuff, they pick up on that and come to come in search of food. But if you run into a snake in the wild, rather than getting in close to look at the eyes or the tail, really your best bet is to step back slowly 3 feet, and typically the snake will scamper away. Snakes are attracted to motion and that sort of stuff. But in any case, in the wild, you want to put some distance between yourself and the snake. Okay. However, if you do see a snake, like I said, it's common sense, but don't pick it up. Other people who get bitten by snakes, 40 to 50% of them actually pick the snake up.
Oh my goodness.
You know, and are honestly surprised when they get bitten.
Right,
you know.
sure.
But unfortunately, if you do get bitten by non-venomous or venomous snakes, you want to take some certain precautions.
Okay.
Even a non-venomous snake bite, you can get lacerations from the teeth. They have needle-sharp teeth that point backwards. Okay. And so, you know, if you pull, you could actually injure the snake if you pull out. But if you get bitten by a venomous snake, the first thing to do is to get away from the snake. Again, that's should be common sense.
Yeah, it should be.
But if you get bit by a snake, thanks to all the hype on TV, books, so forth and so on, the first symptom of a snake bite is this overwhelming fear. And that's not caused by the bite or the venom, it's caused by your over-emotional response to be bitten by a snake. Sure. And then if you do, unfortunately, get bitten by a venomous snake, your rapid pulse rate and all like that but from getting excited about the situation will make your symptoms worse. But you want to get away from the snake, see if you can identify it, but the main thing is to get away from it, to elevate the part that gets bitten around the area of your heart. You want to remove any rings or watches, anything because you probably will swell up if it's not a dry bite. And by the way, 25% of even venomous snake bites, particularly adults, they don't use all their venom. They have a good amount of control. If they're hunting for food, they just use little. But unfortunately, if they're being defensive, if you step on them or they think you're going to corner them, they will use more venom. But you elevate it, you wrap it loosely, and get medical attention just as quickly as you can. Okay. One thing I learned this in camp, and it was fun about this, but we've been taught over time that you're supposed to put an X on it with razors, suck the venom out, apply a tourniquet, and that sort of stuff. And we now know that all that's the wrong thing to do. Okay. Again, the most important thing is to seek medical attention and tell them what you know about the experience, and let the trained professionals do the rest on that.
Yeah. So sucking out the venom and that stuff that we see on TV.
No. But everything about snakes, particularly snake bites, are serious and should be taken seriously. But it's not a death sentence, except for just a handful of the cases that come up.
Okay. All right. Well, Andy, we appreciate that good information.
Well, thank you.
And hopefully we won't be scared of snakes.
Exactly.
They're our friends.